Hello everybody, welcome back to my Sleep Mechanics Talks video series. Today, in this video, we're going over something that I've noticed is kind of overrated by a lot of the community. Typically I've been talking about things that are kind of underrated by the community, but this time I'm talking about something that's a bit overrated, and that is the concept of sneaky snacking. Now, I have to give a lot of credit to this post that I found tonight, actually. I've been thinking about this topic for a while now and wanting to make a video about it, but I actually stumbled upon this Reddit thread tonight. I'll leave a link to it in the description. It's by Reddit user The Shaman. Now, while I don't necessarily agree with everything that they say, I think that they have a lot of good data here. It's a very long write-up. They have a lot of very good data, and I think that it helps to point to this this idea that I'm going to be talking about today. Now, I guess the biggest thing that I disagree with them on is their conclusions. I think that they come to some of the wrong conclusions, but overall their data and research is very thoroughly written out. I give a lot of respect to them, and I still think it's a fantastic post, even if I have some minor disagreements with the conclusions. So, getting into that, really this post makes a point about berry specialists and the sneaky... and are they actually good at being berry specialists, or are they better as ingredient specialists that just happen to produce more berries? And that sounds like it'd be a really easy question to answer, of like, well, duh, berries are their specialty. But if you actually do the math on it and work out exactly everything to do with the berry specialists, you find that if you work their ingredients into strong meals, strong dishes, then after taking into account dish level and the base bonus value on the meals, almost every single Pokemon in the game, even the berry specialists, have stronger ingredient procs than their berry procs if you're using their ingredients wisely. Now, that is one major point against the concept of sneaky snacking. For those of you that don't know, sneaky snacking is the mechanic wherein once a Pokemon hits their inventory cap, once the Pokemon fills their inventory, then from then on, they just find berries and feed them directly to Snorlax. They can't proc skills, and they can't find ingredients at all. Only their inventory can store up a skill bank, and only their inventory can find ingredients. So, now, why would someone consider sneaky snacking on the berry specialist? Well, the whole concept is a berry specialist is good at producing berries. So, if you have the favored berry and you have the berry finding S, then the whole theory behind it is that berry proc is going to be stronger than any ingredient proc that you can get. And while this is typically true when it comes to the case of using those ingredients as filler, if you're smart about your ingredient usage, then you can easily get more strength, and that's the statement of this post. Then you can get more strength out of the ingredients than the berry procs, even on some of the best berry specialists in the game. So that makes a pretty strong argument for not using the sneaky snacking mechanics. However, a lot of the times you're not going to be using those ingredients in a recipe, you're going to be using it as filler. So what is mechanically the strongest option? Well, I've just set up a few simple circumstances here to take into account a couple different scenarios. So, let's look at Feraligatr. I took Feraligatr as kind of a baseline because I think that it's a Pokemon that is particularly hurt more so than other berry specialists, because for those of you that don't know, the Feraligatr has a particularly high skill trigger rate of 5.56%. That's pretty high for a berry specialist. So if you're to max its inventory, as I've done here in the Raichu calculator, you can actually set their inventory to always full if you intend to sneaky snack with them. I think the Feraligatr in particular is hurt quite a bit by the effects of sneaky snacking, just because it wants to proc that skill. It's kind of what makes it stand out against the other Johto starters. In fact, if I pull up here and I use the Pokedex to check the total strength of just the berry finders in the game that are fully evolved, then And I have here that instead of the ingredient count, we'll do berry strength. If we look here, some of the top ones in the game are these guys. You'll notice the Feraligatr is shockingly weaker than the rest that are at the top for berry strength, but it beats out the Steelix, and that's primarily because when calculating for total strength, the Feraligatr actually comes out on top because it procs its skill so much. It gets a lot of extra value in its skill. So you can see that it beats out the Steelix. It narrowly loses to the Raichu and its other Johto starters. That's primarily just because of its skill, despite having that lower berry strength, because it produces a lot of ingredients, and it's got kind of a bit slower in things, so yeah. So going to the Feraligatr, I think this is the ideal circumstance to make the case for sneaky snacking, is if you're, or this is the ideal case for against sneaky snacking, is the Gator. Now, if you have the favored berry, and you have the berry finding S, these two on the right have the berry finding S, these two on the left don't. The only difference between these two and these two is that this one is sneaky snacking, and this one is sneaky snacking, while this one is not, and this one is not. These two have berry finder, these two don't. And you can see that with the favored berry, and with the berry finding S, it does come out to be higher productivity. So I guess in this circumstance, and this circumstance alone, it is better to run the sneaky snacking build. However, you can see that even if you're don't have favored berry, if you have the favored berry, but even don't have the berry finding S on the Feraligatr, it's still producing more in those ingredients and that extra little skill proc than what the Feraligatr produces without sneaky snacking. So, and if I take off favored berry, then without berry finding S, it's way in favor of the Feraligatr, who's proccing its skill and gaining those ingredients. And even the berry finding S one, you can see that the berry finding S without sneaky snacking is coming out on top by about 2,000 strength per day. So in this, if you are not using your filler ingredients in a meal, if you have the favored berry and you have berry finding S, then in that circumstance, yes, sneaky snacking is better. However, an additional thing to consider is if you are a pay-to-play or a premium player, or let's say your Feraligatr has main skill chance up or skill level up M to increase its skill level a little bit, you can see that even with this build, the Gator comes out on top when he is sneaky snacking, because this Gator can never benefit from having a higher level main skill because it's never proccing its skill. It's relying strictly on berries. And I don't even think it would take this many. Let's see. This is the equivalent of having skill level up M. You can see that even just having skill level up M in its sub-skills brings them to be really, really close. You don't even necessarily need that skill seed investment, and being able to use these ingredients in a meal, I think, is far more powerful than just the raw berry production, and easier because you're not having to actively think to not tap the Feraligatr every morning you wake up. So, yeah. Now, that's the best circumstance, is on a Pokemon that has a shockingly high skills rate for a berry specialist. Let's look at something else. A Pokemon that should be the opposite example. Raichu. Raichu's got a really weak ingredient list of apples. The weakest, actually, in the game. Apples are the weakest ingredient, 90 strength. And it's also got a really low skill trigger rate at base. So, this guy should not be proccing his skill that much. He shouldn't have very strong ingredients. He should be more hurt by the process. He's got kind of a lower ingredient rate, but actually, it's kind of a middling ingredient rate. So, really, the Raichu is the best example for why to sneaky snack. And as you can see here, that even with favored berry alone and no berry finding S, they're pretty much the same. The sneaky snacking guy comes out slightly on top, but the with berry finding, yes, it is significantly better for the sneaky snacker. Without favored berry, you can see that the non-sneaky snacking Raichus come out on top every time. And like I said, you can also take into account if you have, let's say, skill level up M on these guys, even though their skill trigger rate's pretty low, it's still something that could happen. It comes to neutralize it out a bit more. So it's just really a mixed bag. I think it's something to evaluate on a case-by-case basis, even on the Raichus, where it really should be the best. Another example that I have here is Altaria. Now, Altaria, it has that energy recovery skill that I don't really like that much on the berry finders. I have the calculator set up right now to be using my Gardevoir. So I think this is like an average healer that most people should have at least this value of a healer, especially for long-term investment. So these Altaria, as you can see, the ones that aren't sneaky snacking have a little bit more energy in their sub-skills because they are gaining a little bit of energy from their own skill. So this is accounting for their skill. However, if I level up their skill, it doesn't matter because they're just hitting the energy cap anyway. So it's not changing anything about how these Altaria function. So, and Altaria has a really, really strong berry. The strongest berry in the game. It's one of the berry specialists that rely on a strong berry instead of fast speed to get a lot of strength. So, realistically, sneaky snacking should be optimal on the Altaria as well, in theory. When you apply the math of it, though, and this little bit of boost in the energy is more significant than you would think. As much as I downscale the self-recovery skill, it does give a boost. It is there. It's not as significant as just contributing to Snorlax's strength directly when you have a good energy for everyone healer. But it still is there, and they're losing that in that. And as you can see, when you don't have favored berry, the berry specialists that aren't sneaky snacking still come out on top just from having that access to that skill. And the ingredients still provide some strength. And once again, all three of these analyses are assuming that we're not using those ingredients intelligently. So, what can we really draw from this conclusion? I guess the biggest thing is just plan your meals. If you're planning on using a berry specialist, think about what ingredients that they are wielding, because they make more than you would think. As you can see at level 60, this Altaria is producing 27 eggs a day. Now, in terms of eggs, that's not really that much, because you really want to be gunning for this meal, which is 25 eggs in a meal. But even if you're making like the Steadfast Ginger cookies, you can use those eggs intelligently and plan a team around using those ingredients that your berry finders are producing. Don't plan your berry finders around their ingredients, because that's more difficult and then adds way more RNG into what you catch. But if you see what their ingredient lists are on your berry finders and work them in, then you can pull a lot of strength from your berry finders ingredients, because as this guy found and did the math, once again, I'll cite him in the description, it is just tremendously powerful. And I don't think the devs intended for the game to be played like this. I don't think it was ever their intent that sneaky snacking would be stronger mathematically than just running them as is. Every Pokemon in this game, every Pokemon produces skills, ingredients, and berries. And yeah, they may be better at one, but ignoring the other aspects of what makes them unique and makes them what they are, then you're losing a part of their identity, and you're losing a part of what can make them stronger than other options. And you're losing that strength. So to give up the ingredients, and this is also why I think that ingredient finder as a sub-skill, or ingredient finding up in the nature of a berry finder, isn't a deal breaker. I think that it's ultimately bad because you do have to try and work more of the berry finder's ingredients into meals in order to use them optimally. But overall, I see it as more of a net neutral just a minor inconvenience. It's not going to actually harm their output as long as you are a dedicated enough player to build a team around them. I don't see it as a net negative. I see it as inconvenience. So, I guess really that's the lessons that can be pulled from this. And also this kind of links back to the concept of enough, like in my last video. A berry specialist might produce more ingredients than you think, and then they can be really strong as a dual specialist. Because realistically, berry specialists are looking for help speed. Help speed first and foremost, maybe that berry finding S sub-skill as well. And if they have fast help speed increases everything, not just the berries. It is the only way to increase berry output aside from berry finding S. And that's why it often gets used on the berry specialists, but it's increasing their ingredient output too. And that's often forgotten about, often overlooked. So a good berry specialist should be producing a decent amount of ingredients as well, because it should just have fast help speed. So that can't be overlooked. And I guess that's all I really have to say about this concept. Like I said, huge respect for the shaman. I hope you've all learned something and can apply this to your Pokemon Sleep playthroughs. Thank you.